Hi everyone. This is our 17th lecture. Uh, the first, well, not the 17th, the 17th set of lectures. This is lecture one. So, today's agenda we'll be talking about what social chain is, what collective behavior is. We'll address a few social dilemmas, and then we'll talk about technology and social change. So, sociologists define social change as the transformation of a culture over time. This change can be either deliberate and intended, and usually, when it is deliberate, there is an organization associated with it, or unplanned and unintentional. So, social change can go either way. Um, However, some social changes are more controversial than others. And in fact, when you think about any controversy that exists in our society or any society, typically there is social change associated with it in one way or another. So there are several ways that social change may occur. First, you could have a major physical event, such as a hurricane or an earthquake. If you look at Hurricane Katrina in 2005 in New Orleans, uh, New Orleans was one type of city one day and a completely different place the next day. Demographic factors can also cause social change. For example, the aging baby boomer generation that is now well on its way on moving into retirement is continuing to cause social change the way they have caused social change just by sheer force of numbers through their whole lives. Discoveries and innovation. Of course, fire is one example. A better example would be microchip processing and other technological innovations. And another way social change can occur is oppressed groups search seeking justice, such as the civil rights movement, such as the gay rights movement, etc. Now, the most important controversies to contributions, to social change have been made through collective action, have been made through social movement organizations, such as the American labor movement that sought for not only unions, but certain labor rights to employees, the civil rights movement in the 1960s for African Americans, the gay rights movement which sparked off in, well, it had earlier predecessors, but it really took off in the 1990s and it continues to today. And also the current Black Lives Matter movement is also takes place via collective action. Now let's talk about collective behavior for a moment. Collective behavior is defined as whenever a group or crowd of people form together to take action toward a shared goal. And there are a variety of theories to explain such behavior. One example of collective behavior can be understood via contagion theory. Contagion theory states that individuals join a mob or crowd because they become infected by the mob mentality. Now, this isn't a super useful theory because it can't be applied to every situation, but it certainly can be applied in those moments when you have a mass of people whose consciousness has been um, manipulated in some way, either through the use of uh, dr drugs or alcohol, or possibly through an especially um, feverish speaker or something like that. Basically, this states that by virtue of being near this group of people, you all kind of collectively go insane. This is really useful for explaining situations like celebratory rioting, like you see when a big sports team has a major victory and then everyone tears apart part of a city. But it's not so useful in explaining certain other collective behavior. Now, emergent norm theory is more helpful. Emergent norm theory states that individual members of a crowd make their own decisions about what the crowd is going to be like. So your social norms for the crowd are created via others' acceptance or rejection of such behaviors. So effectively, a group at a protest or any sort of group is constantly making micro decisions for the whole. What is this group going to be like? So what we see here is something like a bunch of people are at a protest, and there's a really great speaker or something, and then somebody on the edge of the crowd decides to throw a rock at the police, right? And that is the moment of decision. So in that moment, many people are making the decision, are we going to approve of this behavior or are we going to punish this behavior? If the majority of the crowd decides we approve this behavior, they may allow the rock throwing to continue, or they may pick up rocks themselves. And then in that moment, the other people that aren't throwing rocks are also making that decision. So collectively, they all decide they're going to be a rock throwing crowd. Or, on the other hand, they decide they're not going to throw rocks. Then, after the first rock is thrown, everyone might look and point at the rock thrower and say, that person, that's the one that did it. Hey, police, come get this guy, right? So in this way, a group collectively makes such a decision. Now, collective behavior can take different forms. One type of collective behavior is a crowd, which is a temporary gathering of individuals with a common focus. So this could be people on a bus, people at the movies, people in line at the DMV. A riot is another type of collective behavior, which is continuous disorderly behavior by a group of people that disrupts the peace and is directed toward other people and or property. So it's a big disorderly group of people. As is obvious, a riot is most is the thing that contagion theory and emergent norm theory is going after. And then mass behavior occurs when large groups of people engage in similar behaviors without necessarily being in the same place. So as opposed to a crowd or a riot, with mass behavior, people don't all have to be in the same spot. And we see this in the form of fads and fashions. So a fad is an interest or a practice followed very enthusiastically for a relatively short period of time. Uh, Many of us have seen fads come and go over our lifetimes. In the recent past, you could think of the enthusiasm for Pokemon Go in the summer of 2016, and now that's more or less gone away. Fashion, then, is a widespread custom or style of behavior and appearance that is particular to a time or place. So when you think fads, think behavior. When you think fashion, think dress or maybe material objects, because you can find fashion in things like cars or the way you decorate the inside of your house too. Now let's talk about some social dilemmas. This is the real stuff of college. Now, a social dilemma occurs when a behavior or is rational for one individual, but when many people do it, it can lead to collective disaster. One social dilemma that many of us deal with every day is traffic, right? So every morning in most cities, most people are trying to get to their job, maybe in the center of the city, at about 9 a.m. Well, if you were the only one on the road doing that, depending on where you live, you could probably drive from the outskirts of the city to right inside the city in maybe 15 minutes, right? Now, because everyone wants to do that at about the same time, most cities have traffic jams of one sort or another. That's one type of social dilemma. There are many types of social dilemmas, but here are two common social dilemmas, and these are two common social dilemmas that our society deals with almost constantly. First, we have the tragedy of the commons dilemma. This is when many individuals overexploit a public resource for personal gain and they deplete or degrade that resource. So littering or almost any other environmentally related uh, issue is often a tragedy of the commons dilemma. If you had a river and you were the only one living along that river, you could do almost anything you wanted to that river. You could dump motor oil every day probably into the river and it wouldn't actually hurt the river. But if you get a couple thousand, or especially about 1 million people living right by a river, and only every once in a while someone threw something in the river, then you would have a majorly polluted river and it would be destroyed by people overly exploiting it. Another issue we deal with is a public goods dilemma, social dilemma, which is when individuals must contribute to a collective resource even though they might not directly benefit from it, such as car insurance. All of us have to uh, buy into car insurance by law, even though we might be hyper safe drivers and we might never benefit from it. This is one of the major issues faced by health insurance in this country, right? This is one of the major controversies that we deal with. Should everyone have to pay for health insurance, even though there are some people that are super healthy and never need to go see a doctor? That is a prime example of a public goods dilemma. Now let's talk a bit about technology and social change. Now, sociologists have developed a number of theories to explain the role of technology in social change. One common characteristic of these theories is an emphasis on technological determinism. This is the idea that technology plays a defining role in shaping society and what we can do in society. So, two countries go to war. One country has dramatically more advanced technology. That country may be more likely to win the war. Or a bunch of people involved in a social movement have a new technology. Let's say it's 2008 and Twitter is just starting to pop off, right? Well, those people use Twitter and the authorities aren't really aware of how Twitter works. The people then have a dramatic advantage to send messages on a wide scale, and maybe the authorities aren't able to intercept those messages. That happened in the Arab Spring movement in 2008. It also happened to a degree with Occupy Wall Street. Now, we have four more phenomena related to technology. We have two on this slide, two on this slide. Culture lag refers to the time between changes in material culture or technology and the resulting changes in the broader culture's relevant norms, values, meanings, and laws. So culture lag occurs when we have a new technology and we don't know how to ethically deal with it, or we don't know how to be polite with it or behave with it. Everyone has a friend on Facebook or other social media that shares too much, right? We have friends that on Monday morning, while they're at their office at work, talking about how wasted they got over the weekend, right? That is an example of culture lag. They don't know how to behave with the technology because they were never really taught how to. Cultural diffusion then refers to the spread of material and non-material culture to new cultural groups, regardless of the movement of people. So whenever groups of people interact with each other, whether they're nice to each other or not nice to each other, they share information. So groups of people that are nice with each other might show each other food or ways to cook food. This is how we see fusions and innovations with foodways. This is how we see people in Maine, in the state of Maine, eating tacos, right? And that sort of thing. It's also how we see warfare continue, right? So there's two countries again at war, and one country starts using one type of weapon, The other country sees, oh, this is a weapon that's being used against us, and then they develop a similar type of weapon to that. So it's not always nice, cultural diffusion. Cultural imperialism then refers to cultural influence caused by adopting one another's culture's products rather than imposing military force. So cultural imperialism is a bit darker of an idea. It's more of a conflict theory idea. So it is the idea that makes the critique that the United States and other Western cultures, other European cultures, have sold things to the developing world as an effort in a way of dominating them, as a way of colonizing them, right? So Zimbabwe is unlikely to break ties with the United States because they like our cheap T-shirts and they like Coca-Cola, etc. And then cultural leveling is the process by which societies lose their uniqueness and become increasingly similar. So as societies interact with each other increasingly, either through cultural diffusion or maybe cultural imperialism, we all around the world are becoming increasingly similar. And we see this in our modern era. If you go to other countries, you might run into a McDonald's where that certainly wouldn't have happened 80 years ago. If you go to Russia, quite a bit deal would be very different, but you would also be able to find some bottled water or Coca-Cola or maybe get an upgrade for your iPhone, where that certainly wasn't possible before. So that is the end of the first lecture, and I hope you listen to the second lecture soon. Talk to you later.